Captain Daniel Harper looked out the window of the observation deck and saw something that made his blood run cold. The Armada was coming. Hundreds of ships moved through space like a dark storm, and the human fleet at station was small and weak compared to them. For 3 years, humans had fought in the Galactic Coalition's wars. The Coalition was an alliance of many alien species that worked together to keep peace in the galaxy, but humans were not treated as equals. They were treated as cheap soldiers who could be sent to die in any battle. The leaders of the Coalition thought humans were not smart enough or strong enough to do important work. They only sent humans to places where it was expected that many would die. Daniel was different from most humans. He had studied the ways of war. He had learned how to use his mind as well as his weapon. He was the captain of the human regiment on station, and he knew what was coming. The Coalition leaders had ordered him to hold the station against the attack. They said it would only be for a few days. They said the main Coalition fleet would come back and help, but Daniel knew the truth. The Coalition was not coming back. They had abandoned the humans here to die. They were a race of warriors. They were tall and strong with hard skin that was almost like metal. Their ships were fast and powerful. They had fought in space wars for 10,000 years. They knew how to win. The humans at station had only been fighting in space for 3 years, but Daniel knew something that they did not know. He knew what humans were truly made of. On Earth, where humans came from, everything was hard and cruel. The gravity was strong. The weather was violent. There were storms that could kill you and animals that would hunt you. Humans had to be smart and tough just to live. They had learned to solve problems quickly. They had learned to never give up, even when things looked impossible. This was what made humans different. This was what made them dangerous. Daniel called a meeting with his best soldiers. Was a man who had trained as an engineer before he became a soldier. He could take machines apart and put them back together in new ways. Lisa was a woman who could think about battles in her mind and know what would happen before it happened. She was a natural leader. Park was a man with shaking hands and brilliant ideas. He could fix weapons that were broken beyond repair. These people were the heart of the human force at station. "They are coming," Daniel told them. "We all know they are stronger than us in many ways. Their ships are better. Their weapons are more powerful. Their soldiers have been fighting for longer than we have been alive. But we have something they do not have. We have adaptability. We have the ability to change and to survive." Nodded. "What do you want us to do, Captain?" "I want us to turn this station into a fortress," Daniel said. "Not a fortress that looks strong from the outside. That will not work. I want us to create something that looks weak but is actually deadly. They expect us to fight them in normal ways. They expect us to lose. We are going to fight them in ways they do not expect." For the next 2 days, the humans worked without stopping. They took the station apart. They moved machines to places where they had never been before. They made weapons from parts that were never meant to be weapons. They dug tunnels through the station's structure. They created hiding places. They made it so that every corridor could become a killing field. They did this because humans were good at using what they had to survive. When the Armada arrived, they sent a message to station. The message was simple: surrender or die. Daniel sent a message back. He said no. The commander laughed. He thought this would be easy. The battle began in the morning. Ships fired at the station. But the humans had learned something important. They had learned that you do not always need a better weapon. You need a weapon used in a way that the enemy does not expect. Had rewired the station's defense systems. He had made them work together in a way that no one had thought of before. The first attack was destroyed before it even reached the station. They tried again and again. The humans took heavy losses. Many good people died, but for every human that died, 5 soldiers died. This was not how it was supposed to happen. They were not losing to a weaker enemy. After 12 hours of fighting, they landed troops on the station. Now it was hand to hand. Now it was brutal, but Daniel had prepared for this. The humans knew every tunnel. They knew every room. They could move through the station like ghosts. The soldiers could not. used explosives made from station materials to destroy a whole section of forces. Lisa led her soldiers through passages that they did not know existed, hitting them from behind, kept the systems running, taking damage from and fixing it before the station died. On the second day of fighting, Daniel was standing in the command center when a soldier came through the door. Daniel did not have time to reach his weapon, but he did not need to. His hands and his brain were enough. Daniel had been born on Earth, where humans learned to fight from childhood. He was faster than the soldier. He was smarter about how to move. He won that fight. By the end of the first 72 hours, they had lost 4 entire ships. The human losses were terrible. Many soldiers lay in the medical center with wounds that would take months to heal. Some did not survive, but they were backing away. They were losing. The commander was angry. He had been defeated by humans, a race he had thought was weak. He made a decision that he would later regret. He activated an old weapon, a doomsday weapon that his people had created long ago. He sent it across space toward the Coalition's core worlds. This weapon could destroy an entire planet. There were 6 major planets in the Coalition's core. The weapon was heading toward them all. When the Coalition leaders learned what had happened, they were afraid. They had lost ships and soldiers. The humans had won the battle at station. But now something much worse was coming. Someone had to stop that weapon. Someone had to find it and destroy it before it reached the planets. Daniel sat in the command center, covered in blood and dirt. His soldiers lay all around him. They had won, but victory had come at a terrible cost. And now they learned that a much bigger battle was coming. Princess of the Empire sat in her private chamber and watched the reports come in. The station called had fallen to the humans. This was not possible. Humans were a young race. They were supposed to be weak, but they had destroyed 4 warships. They had killed thousands of soldiers. This bothered her greatly. Was different from most. She was born into the royal family, but she did not believe in war and killing. She had studied the history of the galaxy. She had learned about all the races and all the ways they lived. She believed that conflict could be stopped. She believed that if species could talk to each other, they would not need to fight. Her father, the emperor, did not agree with her. He believed that the only way to rule was through power and force. When spoke about peace, he called her weak. The older generals and commanders agreed with him. They saw as someone who would destroy the empire with her crazy ideas about talking instead of fighting. But when heard that her own government had sent a doomsday weapon toward the Coalition planets, she became very angry. This was the kind of action that would start a war that could kill billions of people. This was exactly what she wanted to prevent. She could not stand by and do nothing. Made a choice. It was a choice that would cost her everything. She decided to contact the Coalition directly. She decided to offer them information that could stop the weapon, but she knew that her own people would call this treason. Her father would be ashamed. Her generals would call for her execution. She did not care. She had to try. The message she sent was direct and clear. She told the Coalition that the weapon came from a fortress on a planet called Prime. She told them that the weapon was hidden in the deepest part of the fortress. She told them that she would help them stop it. She told them that she was willing to turn against her own empire for the chance to save billions of lives. The Coalition leadership was shocked by this message. Some of them wanted to ignore it. Some of them wanted to use the information to capture or kill the princess. But the Coalition's peace leaders saw something different. They saw an alien who believed in the same things they believed in. They saw someone who was willing to sacrifice everything for what was right. They decided to contact the humans. They decided that if anyone could complete this impossible mission, it would be the soldiers from Earth who had just won a battle that should have been lost. Daniel Harper was in the medical center when he received the message. He was standing next to Lisa. Lisa's leg had been badly hurt in the fighting, but the doctors said she would be able to walk again in a few weeks. Daniel was telling her about his home on Earth when the commander came in. "Captain Harper," the commander said, "we have a problem. and it may be your problem to solve." The message was transferred to Daniel's personal communicator. He read the words sent by Princess. The message was simple and honest. The princess was offering to help stop the doomsday weapon. She was offering to guide humans to the fortress. She was offering to risk everything. Daniel had to make a choice. He could say no. His soldiers were tired. They had fought for 72 hours without stopping. Many of them were wounded. Many of them were grieving for the friends they had lost. They deserved to rest. But Daniel knew what his answer had to be. Billions of people were about to die. The humans had been given a chance to stop this. The humans had been given a choice to show the galaxy what they truly were. "Get me a team," Daniel said. "Get me the best soldiers we have. We leave in 2 hours." By the time the transport ship was ready, Daniel had assembled his people. Park came even though his hands had been burned trying to save wounded soldiers. Came even though he had not slept in more than 40 hours. And Lisa came even though she had to use a cane to walk. When they arrived at the coalition meeting point, they found someone waiting for them. It was Princess. She was tall and strong like all women, but there was something different about her. Her eyes showed intelligence and kindness. Her movements showed that she was brave. She was not dressed in the armor of war. She wore simple clothing, like someone who was ready to travel and ready to fight if she had to. "You came," she said to Daniel. "I was not sure you would come." "A lot of people are going to die if we do not go," Daniel said. "That is reason enough for a human to do anything." Nodded. She understood something important about humans. She understood that they did not need to be forced to do the right thing. They would choose to do the right thing, even if it cost them everything. "The fortress is difficult to reach," she said. "The soldiers there will fight hard to protect the weapon. Many of you may not come back alive." "We know," Daniel said, "but we are going to try anyway." Looked at each of the human soldiers. She saw with his burned hands. She saw who looked like he might fall asleep standing up. She saw the others, all tired and hurt but still ready to fight. She realized in that moment that she had made the right choice. These people understood something that her own empire had forgotten. They understood that fighting for what was right was more important than staying comfortable and safe. "Then let us go," she said. "Let us stop this weapon together. Let us show the galaxy that there is another way." The transport ship lifted off from the coalition station. Inside, humans and a princess sat together, planning for a battle that seemed impossible to win. But the humans had learned something on station. They had learned that impossible battles could be won if you had people who refused to give up. As the ship moved through space toward Prime, Daniel watched the princess as she studied maps of the fortress. He saw intelligence in her face. He saw courage. He saw someone who believed in the same things he believed in. He did not know it yet, but his life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. The fortress rose from the black ground like a monument to death. It was massive and dark, made of materials that had been hardened in the deep fires of Prime's hot core. Weapons turrets lined every wall. Soldiers moved on the ramparts, always watching, always ready. This was a place built to kill anyone who tried to enter. The team stood at the edge of the obsidian plains, looking at the fortress in the distance. Daniel checked his weapons, looked at the electronic systems he had brought, studied the structure, looking for weaknesses. They all knew that this was the moment where things became real. This was the moment where they would either succeed or they would die. Pointed to the left side of the fortress. "There," she said. "Do you see that section where the wall meets the rocky ground? That is where my father showed me a secret passage many years ago. It was built as an escape route for the royal family. Almost no one knows about it anymore." "How do we get there without being seen?" Daniel asked. "We move at night," said. "They rely on their advanced sensors during the day. At night, they use fewer soldiers and fewer sensors. We can move through the darkness." They waited for the sun to set. The sky turned from black to deep purple to black again. The temperature dropped until it was almost freezing. On Prime, the nights were harsh and cold, but humans had learned to deal with harsh places. Earth had taught them how to survive in difficult conditions. When the darkness was complete, they moved. Each human soldier moved carefully, using the rocks and low ground to stay hidden. Moved with them, her nature allowing her to see in the dark better than the humans could. But she moved slowly, waiting for the humans to catch up. She understood that strength was not about speed. Strength was about moving together. They reached the section of wall that had described. She pressed her hand against the cold stone, and for a moment nothing happened. Daniel wondered if she had made a mistake. Then slowly, a section of the wall moved inward. The hidden passage was still there, still working after all these years. Inside the passage, the air was stale and cold. The walls seemed to press in on them, turned on a light, and the darkness disappeared. They were in a tunnel that had been carved from the rock itself. The passage was narrow, and they had to move carefully so that they would not make noise. After walking for what felt like hours, they reached a metal door. On the other side of this door was the fortress itself. This was the moment where they would be in danger. This was the moment where soldiers might see them. Stopped before opening the door, she turned to Daniel. "Once we pass through this door, we cannot turn back. Are you certain you want to continue?" Daniel looked at his soldiers. He saw fear on some of their faces. He saw determination on others. These were people from a harsh world. They knew how to face fear. "Open it," he said. The door slid open silently. They stepped into the fortress of the Empire. The corridors were wide and tall, designed for soldiers who were much larger than humans. The humans moved through these corridors like small ghosts. They could hear the sounds of the fortress around them. Machines hummed. Water moved through pipes. Soldiers walked on distant pathways. Moved ahead of the group, checking the electronic systems as they went. He carried devices that he had built himself, tools that could talk to the machines. He moved carefully and quietly, looking at every panel and every lock. "There," he said, pointing to a security system. "This system connects to the main control station. If we can access this, I might be able to see the whole fortress. I might be able to find the weapon." He attached his devices to the system. His burned hands moved carefully across the connections. The humans around him watched for guards. Minutes passed, then smiled. "I have it," he said quietly. "The weapon is in the core chamber, 7 levels down. We need to move fast." They moved through the fortress toward the center. The corridors became narrower and more protected. They passed guards, but they used the shadows and the knowledge that gave them. She knew the fortress well enough to predict where guards would be stationed. She knew the best routes to take. Then, as they approached the core chamber, everything changed. Lights came on. Alarms began to sound. The guards knew they were here. "Run!" Daniel shouted. They ran through the corridors. Behind them, soldiers moved to stop them. Threw one of his devices, and it disrupted the security system. Doors that had been locked swung open. Doors that were supposed to stay open suddenly closed. The fortress itself became confused. They reached the core chamber. The doomsday weapon sat in the center of the room, a massive machine that was humming with terrible power. Above them, on a platform, stood a general. His name was, and he was ancient, and he had fought in more wars than most had lived years. "Princess," said, his voice was like thunder, "you have betrayed your people." "I have saved my people," said, stepping forward. "This weapon will kill billions. I cannot allow that." "You are weak," said. "You have always been weak. Your father should have abandoned you as a child. You bring shame to the Empire." Daniel stepped forward now. He looked up at this ancient warrior, this general who had killed more enemies than Daniel had ever seen. Daniel knew he could not win this fight by force, was stronger and more experienced. But humans had other weapons. They had words. They had the ability to reach people in ways that other species did not understand. "In my world," Daniel said, There is an animal called a wolf. Wolves are fierce and strong. They kill their prey. But when a wolf has a daughter, that wolf will die to protect that daughter. That is what makes the wolf strong, not the killing, the love, the willingness to protect what matters. Looked at Daniel. His face did not change, but something in his eyes shifted. Your daughter, Daniel continued. Does she want you to do this? Does she want you to destroy the galaxy? For a long moment did not move. The alarm continued to sound. The fortress shook. Then slowly lowered his weapon. Take him away, said to his soldiers. But his soldiers did not move. They were watching their general. They were waiting to see what he would do. Do not do this, said quietly. His voice was no longer like thunder. It was like an old man who was very tired. Let them go. The soldiers stepped aside, moved to the weapon's controls. His hands moved across the panel with perfect precision. The humming sound changed. The weapon began to shut down. And in that moment, the doomsday weapon that could have destroyed billions of lives was stopped by a human soldier and a princess who believed that the galaxy could be something better than it was. The moment shut down the weapon. The fortress became very dangerous. The machines that controlled the basic systems were breaking down. The walls began to shake. Sections of the ceiling started to fall. The building was destroying itself rather than letting the weapon be taken by enemies. We need to move now, Daniel shouted. They ran through the corridors. The path they had taken to reach the core chamber was no longer safe. The way back through the secret passage was blocked by fallen rocks and twisted metal. The humans had to find a new way out of the fortress. Ran with them, her strength allowing her to move quickly. Behind them, the fortress was collapsing. Sections of ceiling crashed down. Walls cracked and separated. The whole structure was coming apart. They turned a corner and found an exit that led outside. But between them and that exit was a long hallway, and above them the ceiling was falling. Large pieces of stone and metal were crashing down. Dust filled the air. It was impossible to cross. We cannot make it, said. The ceiling will crush us before we reach the exit. Daniel looked at his team. He looked at his burned hands. He looked at who was barely awake from exhaustion. He looked at the other soldiers who had fought so hard and given so much. He looked at who was willing to turn against her own empire for what was right. You go, Daniel said to them. Get to the exit, go now. What about you? Asked. I will hold the ceiling, Daniel said. I will buy you time. Understood what Daniel meant. Had worked with humans for long enough to understand that humans would sacrifice themselves for the people they cared about. This was not strange to. This was what humans did. But Daniel did not wait for permission. He moved back toward the falling ceiling. He found a support pillar that was starting to crack. He placed his body under it and pushed upward with all his strength. The weight was enormous. His muscles screamed with pain. His vision started to go dark. But the ceiling held. For a moment, there was a small space where the humans could pass safely. Go, Daniel shouted, go now. And the others ran forward. The ceiling began to settle lower. Daniel pushed harder, using every bit of strength that was left in his body. His legs shook. Blood ran down his face. He was going to die here. He knew this. But the others would live. Then someone grabbed his arm. She had stopped. She had turned back. No, Daniel said, you have to go. I will not leave you, said. She added her strength to his. Together they pushed against the falling ceiling. More of the humans reached the exit, turned back to look, and he saw the princess pushing beside the captain. He saw two soldiers from different worlds, working together, holding back the destruction of the fortress itself. Come on, shouted, keep going, we can still make it. Daniel and pushed together. The ceiling was coming down faster now. The metal support was bending. They could not hold it much longer, but they had to hold it long enough. The last of the human soldiers passed through the exit, was the last one to leave the fortress. As soon as he was through, Daniel felt the weight above him become too much. The ceiling was going to fall. "Run," he said too, but did not run. Instead, she pulled Daniel forward with all her strength. They both fell through the exit just as the ceiling came down behind them with a sound like a thunderstorm. Pieces of stone and metal crashed down where they had been standing just moments before. They landed hard on the black ground of Prime. Behind them, the fortress was collapsing into itself. Massive sections of the structure fell inward. The doomsday weapon, the thing that would have killed billions, was destroyed under tons of rock and metal. The humans lay on the ground, gasping for air. Their bodies were covered in cuts and burns. Daniel's arm hurt where the ceiling had struck him, had a wound on her side that was bleeding, but they were alive. All of them were alive. The transport ship was waiting for them in the distance and helped the others to their feet. They moved toward the ship, away from the collapsing fortress. Behind them, the building continued to fall apart. As they climbed aboard the ship, Daniel looked back one more time. The fortress was gone. The weapon was gone. Billions of lives had been saved. But the cost was high. The human soldiers had lost 5 people in the fighting inside the fortress. Lisa had been struck by falling debris. Maya, the field medic, had saved Lisa's life by wrapping her wound, but Lisa might never walk properly again. Other soldiers carried wounds that would heal only with time. The ship took off. As they moved away from Prime, Daniel sat down and held his injured arm, sat beside him. "You sacrificed yourself," she said. "You were ready to die so that we could live." "Yes," Daniel said. "That is what soldiers do. That is what humans do for people they care about." "On Prime, a general would never do such a thing," said. "A general would save himself first. That is the way of my people." "That is one of the reasons why humans are different," Daniel said. "We believe that the people you care about are more important than your own life." Looked at him for a long time. She saw the dirt on his face, the blood on his clothes, the exhaustion in his eyes. She saw someone who had given everything for a mission that had seemed impossible. "The Empire will call me a traitor," she said quietly. "My father will call for my death. I can never go home again." "You saved billions of lives," Daniel said. "You chose what was right over what was easy. Where I come from, we call that honor. That is worth more than any empire." In the medical center of the transport ship, doctors worked on the injured soldiers. Lisa lay on a bed, her leg bandaged and elevated. She was alive because of the courage of the humans around her. She was alive because people had chosen to fight for her life. And in the command center, the news of the weapon's destruction was being sent to the coalition. The message said that the humans had done the impossible. The message said that humans were not weak. The message said that humans were the kind of soldiers that the galaxy had never seen before. The message said that everything had changed. The ceremony took place on the Coalition's main station, a huge structure that floated in space and served as the meeting place for all the alien species that worked together to keep peace in the galaxy. Thousands of beings from dozens of different worlds were present. They had come to watch an award ceremony for the humans who had saved the galaxy from destruction. Daniel Harper stood in a dress uniform that had been made specially for him. The uniform was blue and gold, the colors of the Terran Republic. He felt uncomfortable in the formal clothes. He was a soldier, not someone who should be standing in ceremonies. But the coalition leaders had insisted. They wanted everyone in the galaxy to know what the humans had done. The Empress of the Empire stood at the front of the ceremony hall. She was tall and commanding, and her eyes were sharp with intelligence. Beside her stood her daughter, Princess. The princess wore formal clothing made of white and silver materials that seemed to shine in the light. She looked out at the crowd with a calm expression, but Daniel could see the strength in her face. The Empress began to speak. Her voice was powerful and clear. She said that the Empire had been wrong about humans. She said that humans had proven themselves to be honorable and brave. She said that they would no longer see humans as weak or disposable. She said that from this day forward, humans would be equals in the Galactic Coalition. When the Empress finished speaking, Park was called forward. He had burns on his hands that would take months to heal, but he had not let these burns stop him from completing the mission. The Coalition leaders gave him a medal that showed he was a hero. The medal was made of precious metal and stones from 10 different worlds. Was called forward next. He received a medal for his bravery and for his leadership. Then Lisa was called forward. Even though her leg was still injured, she walked to the front of the ceremony with determination. She received her medal with pride. One by one, the human soldiers who had gone on the mission were called forward. Each one received recognition. Each one was honored. The Coalition wanted everyone to know that these humans were not expendable soldiers. These humans were heroes. Finally, Daniel Harper was called to the front. The ceremony hall became very quiet. Everyone wanted to see the human captain who had held back a falling ceiling so that his people could escape. The Empress herself gave Daniel his medal, but before she did, she spoke to him. "You showed the galaxy something important," the Empress said. "You showed us that courage is not about strength. Courage is about choosing to do what is right, even when it costs everything. My empire will remember this." Daniel took the medal. As he looked down at it, he thought of the soldiers who had not made it back. He thought of the people who had died so that billions of others could live. He thought of the cost that victory had demanded. After the ceremony ended, the crowd began to leave, but Daniel found himself alone in a quiet chamber. He was not sure how he had ended up there, but he was grateful for the silence. The door opened, and Princess walked in. She was no longer wearing her formal clothes. She wore simple traveling clothes, the kind that someone would wear when they were preparing for a long journey. "You are leaving," Daniel said. It was not a question, he could see it in her face. "I cannot stay here," said. "The empire is in chaos. My father calls me a traitor, but there are who believe as I do. There are who want peace, who want to work with the coalition instead of fighting against it. I am going to try to help them." Daniel nodded. "That will be dangerous work." "I know," said, "but it is necessary work, just like your mission was necessary." They stood together in the quiet chamber. Neither one was sure what to say. They had been through something extraordinary together. They had fought side by side. They had saved each other's lives. "Tell me about Earth," said. "I have always wanted to know more about the world that creates such remarkable people." So Daniel told her about Earth. He told her about the tall forests and the wide oceans. He told her about cities filled with lights and voices and life. He told her about the rain that fell from the sky and the wind that moved through the air. He told her about the animals that ran wild across the plains and flew through the clouds. As he spoke, listened with complete attention. She asked questions about the gravity and the weather. She asked about the history of humans and how they had learned to survive on a world so harsh that it had killed many of them. "It sounds like a beautiful place," she said when Daniel finished. "It is," Daniel said. "It is hard and sometimes dangerous, but it is home. It is the place where humans learn to be strong." "I think Earth should be proud of you," said. "All of you. You came to space thinking you were weak. You came believing that you would always be treated as less than other species. But you proved that humans are remarkable. You proved that honor and courage matter more than power." "We learned that from our world," Daniel said. "Earth taught us that you can be weak and still survive. You can face enemies that are stronger and you can still win. All you need is the will to keep fighting." Stepped closer to him. "I am not going to forget you," she said. "I am not going to forget what you did. The humans will build something great in this galaxy. I can feel it. And I hope that one day I will see you again." "I hope so too," Daniel said. Before she left, gave him something small. It was a crystal that glowed with soft light. It was the same crystal that existed in all the great treasures of the Empire. She told him that it was the symbol of a bond between worlds. It was the symbol of two people who had chosen to believe in each other. As left the chamber, Daniel held the crystal and watched her go. He knew that she was right. The humans would build something great in this galaxy. They had proven themselves. They had shown that a young race from a harsh world could stand with the oldest and strongest species and not just survive, but excel. Outside the station, the ships of the Galactic Coalition moved through space. Among them was a new ship, the first human-built warship made with Coalition technology. It was called the Defender. It would fly through space carrying human soldiers to places where they were needed. And on a distant planet, in a fortress that was being rebuilt with new ideas and new beliefs, and Coalition species worked together to create something that had never existed before. They were building a future where strength was not about power, but about choosing to do what was right. The doomsday weapon was gone. The fortress had fallen, but something new was rising, something built on the belief that the galaxy could be better than it had been, something built on the courage of a human soldier and a princess who had decided to change the future. And Daniel Harper, standing on the observation deck of the Coalition station, held the glowing crystal and smiled. The battle was over, but the real work was just beginning. And humans, the remarkable people from the harsh world called Earth, were ready to show the galaxy what they could truly do.